All right, friends. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We're gonna if you want to just quickly in the chat let me know what let us all know a little bit of the congregations that are here. So who's here? Um,
We're from St. Andrews in Waterford. This
there
is
you
Lois
go.
and Pat Kent.
All right. Good. Messiah, we got Royal Oak, Belleville, woohoo.
Nativity.
Stevens, St. Paul's, Christ Church, Jackson, Michael's and All Angels, Mount Clemens, Birmingham, St. Catherine's, Grace, Troy.
There's Jack. Oh,
There
there.
we go. All right, Church of the Resurrection. Great. All right, I'm going to ask Dennis to mute everyone, and then I'll unmute myself. And then we'll because of the goodly number of folks that we have, we will largely use the chat instead of actual talking, but there'll be a point where we'll be able to do a little bit of that as well. So friends, the Lord be with you. And let us pray. Oh, direct us, O Lord, in all of our doings with your most gracious favor, and further us with your continual help, that in all of our works begun, continued, and ended in you, we may glorify your holy name, and finally, by your mercy, obtain everlasting life. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Okay, we're gonna let's start. Dennis, if you could get us the agenda, that will be great. Um, all right, there we go. Vestry Day, opening prayer. Check, look at us. So we're going to do diocesan staff, Vestry 101, anti-racism, safe church, parochial reports, reparations, how to focus on ministry, not maintenance, welcoming children and families. That's what we've got, friends. We're going to go until noon, and we'll have a couple of breaks that will be inserted. All right, next slide, Dennis. Thank you. Here we go, friends. What the heck is the purpose of the Episcopal Diocese of Michigan? All right, so the diocese, all of us, all of our communities of faith, our structures, our entities, we exist to equip and create viable communities of faith that embody the gospel of Jesus Christ in a way that moves our local communities, our country, and our world closer to the reign of God. It's audacious, it is hope-filled, and it is possible with God. So that's what this is all about. And we're going to be talking about equipping and creating vital communities of faith. So, and I so appreciate the people who are on vestries and bishops committees taking the time to do that good work. So, all right, let's go. What's next? Who are you going to call? You know, we've had changes in my staff, and so we want to just go over so you have an idea of who to call for what. All right, Dennis. All right. So, if you got an emergency event at your congregation, friends, call me. That means if you have to call the police, send me a text to let me know. Right? If you have to call like emergency services in any way, shape, or form, let me know. Right? Clergy pastoral care, a thinking partner. I am happy. That's the part of equipping folks and for congregational development, fundraising, stewardship, capital campaigns, exciting developments at your church. I want to know, and I'm happy to be with you guys as much as I can. My visits are once every 3 years on a Sunday morning, but I am happy to be with you guys on a Saturday or a weeknight or a weekday, whatever works. Okay, next. All right, the Reverend Canon Ellen Ekevag, Canon to the Ordinary, Resources, Coaching, Thinking Partner on Congregational Development. Ellen is amazing in this area, special congregational projects, mutual ministry reviews when you're working with your clergy and the governing bodies, the vestry, diocesan processes, total ministry, shared ministry models, fresh start, the College for Congregational Development, Parochial Reports, and Susie Schaefer is also going to be good for those. All right. Who else? The Venerable Timothy Spanis, my archdeacon. If you are interested in the diaconate, have curiosities. If you're interested in local formation, and Tim is also one of the 2 people on my staff, the Commission on Ministry. Tim also makes a visit. It frequently comes with me on Sunday morning visits. All right, next. Susie Schaefer, the Reverend Canon Susie Schaefer, Canon for Transitions and Formation, clergy transitions. Someone's coming, someone's going, someone's going to retire. The Commission on Ministry, someone in your community of faith is interested in ordained ministry. Someone is interested in deepening their education around lay ministry, Whitaker Institute programming, lay licensing, diocesan liturgies, and parochial reports. Okay. Keep going. There we go. Who to call? The Reverend Canon's sister, Veronica Dunbar, Sister V, Canon for Spirituality and Race, Anti-Racism, Civil Rights Pilgrimage, Commission on Ministry Chaplain, Reparations, Indigenous Ministries, Spirituality of all stripes and sorts, and the Advent and Lenten book study. There you go. A great thinking partner for all of these issues. Next. All right, Canon Carmen Piggins, Canon for Ministry with Young People, resourcing young people's ministry in your congregation, diocesan trainings with Godly Play, Forma, campus ministry, youth events, Safe Church, End Gun Violence Michigan, Diocesan Youth Council, and a campus ministries liaison. All right, Carmen will come out and be with you and give you all sorts of hints and tips on how to get that vital young people's ministry. Keep going. All right, Dennis, who is the man behind the screens right now. Canon Dennis Boyd Jr., Canon for Communications, communication support for our congregations with your website, social media, audio, video, direct mail. Dennis is your person. The weekly connection, event registration form issues. He knows how to create a form stack, dear friends. Diocesan website updates. When you go on the website and our website and you find sort of things, my spouse Susan likes to troll around on our website sometimes. It's amazing the goofy things Susan Harlow finds. When you find the goofy things that are really outdated, let us know. And we are continually working to update that. Digital resources, PowerPoint, event recordings, etc. If you feel like you need some help with tech stuff, please call Canon Dennis. All right, keep going. All right, Susan Mason, Diocesan Program Administrator. So if you are changing canonical residence, letters of good standing, you're a clergy person, archival support. Hey, where is my baptism? Questions regarding diocesan events and registration. Do I have to register for the clergy thing? Can I at the clergy conference? Is it too late? College for Congregational Development Administrator. All things for the College of Congregational Development. Administration for the Standing Committee, Diocesan Council trustees, and other diocesan task force. And at this point, also, if you need to get on the bishop's calendar, Susan Mason, give you a tip on this, friends. Call her. If you need to get on my calendar, sending an email actually makes for a lot of back and forth. If you pick up the phone and call her, you can look at your calendar. She can look at my calendar real time. Boom, sorted. Okay, keep going. All right, Crystal Ramirez, Director of Human Resources, Church Pension Fund, all things pension fund, benefits enrollment, including medical and dental, group life insurance, background checks, payroll. Super, super helpful. All right, keep going. All right, Chris Ventura. He is our new Chief Financial Officer. We'll get to hear from him for a little bit, but Chris is a parishioner at St. John's in Plymouth. Before that, he was at Christ Church in Dearborn with his family. So if you're looking for budget assistance, the Growth and Income Fund, treasurer questions, you're wondering about the finance, Chris Ventura is your person to call. Okay, call and email. There you go. Okay, keep going. All right, Kara Chapman. There you go. Kara, accountant, and the person who has the longest tenure on my staff, billing, general accounting questions, the Trethaway Downs Children's Funds. So, the questions, they're like, how much is our apportionment? When did you get that? What's going on with? Call Kara, right? Email Kara. Okay, keep going. All right, Tony Perez, Diocesan Property Manager. So Tony comes to us from St. Elizabeth's in Redford, and he was a senior warden there. He does congregational property support. You're contemplating renting your property. You need to figure out something that's going on with church insurance after you've made that first call. Rental leases, you need a boilerplate lease that's going to be helpful when you want to rent your building and you have to then take it to the standing committee for approval. Property grants from council and trustees. Tony is going to be able to help you. All right. Who else? Okay, Jamal Dillman Hasso, archivist and historiographer. He comes to us from St. Paul's in Lansing. Requests for records of closed congregations, baptismal, confirmation, marriage. And as we move forward and really diving deep into the history of our diocese, Jamal is going to be really helpful. Delighted to have him with us. Okay, who else? All right, the canine to the ordinary, canine Tally Perry. She's continuing to discern suitable treats. If you want to design dog agility courses, and if you just want to have an absolutely gorgeous animal with icy blue eyes looking at you and loving you, Tally's your person. She's a dog, but still. All right, and then one of the newest members is Jasper. Jasper is our associate shepherd in training. And he's still kind of a puppy. He's still working out his gifts, but he's got a lot of Christmas cheer. And if you need soulful looks and love, Jasper's going to do it for you. All right, now keep going. So here's let's see. So who do you call when? All right, now what I want to do is put the answers into the chat. Who do you call if you want to rent your building? Answers in the chat, friends. There you go. There you go. Tony Perez. I love it. That's it. Right? Not so much Ellen, but Tony Perez. But here's the thing. Here's the thing I want you to know. If you called Ellen, Ellen would say, thank you for calling me. And now I'm going to connect you with Tony, right? You can call any single one of us and we will get you to the right person. Also, on our diocesan website, everybody's phone numbers, all of the emails, all of that is on the diocesan website under staff. All right. Our young people want to stop gun violence. Who are we calling? Who are you going to call? Carmen. Yes. Yes. Or who else? Right? Anyone. because call any one of us. We will get you to the right person. And yes, I desperately care about End Gun Violence Michigan. But yes, right? Okay. Our priest is retiring. Who are we going to call? All right, Susie. And who is the priest called? Me. The priest is called me. And then the other people. There you go. Good, Carmen. Although I'm not really sure you're supposed to give the answers, but thank you. All right. Our clergy person was admitted to the hospital. Who are we calling? Yeah. Yeah, you were calling me. You were texting me. Yes. All right. Next slide. All right. Who do you call when? All right. Here's now this one, you get to pick the answer. Who do you call when? We have an amazing food pantry that serves 500 families a week. Oh, well done. That's very impressive. Is there some money to help us buy more food? Where would I get that money? All right. We say, okay, D, other churches with grants. Good. C, Bishop's discretionary fund. Right? All right. B. Yeah. Yes, all of the above. Right? So I know with B, C, and D, I got to go back to trustees and look to make sure. I'm not sure you're going to get food money from trustees, but you will get it from B, C, and D. And who do you call for that? If you're interested in grant programs, who do you call? This is the extra bonus trick question. Well, Kara, but if you call Kara, what's going to happen? That's it, St. Stephen's Church. Anybody. If you call Kara, she will tell you who to call. I'm going to say for grant programs, Tony Perez. But the other answer is anyone. We will get you to the right person. Okay, what's the next slide? All right, who do you call when? We are going to have a capital campaign and we'll need a line of credit. Who are we calling? Okay, Chris, possibly. There you go. All right, as long as you don't write D as in dog, then you win, right? It is everyone's business, right? So it's you call the bishop, you're gonna get in touch with the bishop, you're gonna get because you need bishop and standing committee approval, right? And if you're doing the capital campaign type thing, super helpful always to chat with Chris, who's the finance guy. And there's never been a capital campaign that I didn't like. So, well, maybe a few, but mostly. So there you go. All right, next slide. All right. Friends, what matters? I wanna do a reading. I want to do a reading from, and we can go back to seeing everyone if we would for a minute, Dennis. So we're going to do a reading from Matthew. Okay, 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and his brother John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. And suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And then Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And while he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, This is my son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. And when the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. And as they were coming down the mountains, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." And the thing is, friends, right? Feast of the Transfiguration. The thing is that I think mountaintop experiences give us insights and hope because we have a clear vision from being up on the top of whose we are and where we're headed. But they can also burden us with a bit of a nostalgic yearning for what was and can sometimes hamper our vision for what could be. Right? Because, oh my goodness, that mountaintop experience, if only I could have that again. And if we're always kind of nostalgic for what was, then we're looking backwards, and looking backwards prevents us from moving effectively forward. And I've never seen anyone drive a car well by looking in the rear view mirror if they're going forward. And if we try to stay put on top of that mountain, well, it limits our ability to make a difference. Summits, by their very nature, are tiny places. And Christianity at its core is a faith that is ever expanding and calls us to be reaching out and to be connected and in relationship with one another. I think about my own mountaintop experiences, and I have that nostalgia for them too. But I do know that Jesus didn't stay up on the mountain. They all went down. And as soon as he goes down, he begins to start doing miracles and curing people. Because going down the mountain is where the ministry is. The mountain gives us a vision, and then we go and do. And this is what I think vestries are called to do. That vestries with the guidance, oversight, partnership with our clergy, we create the vision for the mission and ministry in your unique context. Because Jackson's not Waterford, and Ann Arbor's not Trenton, Wyandott's not Livonia, Belleville's not Birmingham, and Lansing isn't DeWitt, and DeWitt isn't Detroit. It's all unique. And that's what makes our work fun. And so when you gather with your vestry in that 1.5, 2 hours and all the pre-meetings to prepare for them, you're creating your future course. Dennis, let's go back to the slides if you might. And the next slide. Okay, what we're doing with the clergy person, we're setting the vision and then executing the mission for the community of faith that we serve and for the people in our communities who have yet to walk through our doors, because they are part of this as well. We can never limit it to just the people we know. Archbishop Temple said that the church is the only institution that exists for people who aren't members. Right? And we do all this to create and carry out our mission in a unique context. So the first two things you attend to in a vestry meeting are the ones where the most attention is going to be spent. And so let me show you a slide that I have lived and died by, and I invite you to take it in. Next slide there. All right. When you start a vestry meeting, right? When you start, we've got high energy. You can see that, right? On that y-axis there, right? And then as and then we've got the end over on the right-hand side of the x-axis. All right. So next slide, Dennis. All right. Engagement in a vestry meeting, right, is the highest typically at the start of the meeting. And as the meeting goes on, frequently the engagement might go down a bit. All right, Dennis, next slide. Oh, and the blood sugar is going down, right? Right. And so the blood sugar, particularly if it's one of those evening meetings, if it's right after church and you've only had a little bit of carbs at coffee hour, right? It's beginning, that's going down. The engagement's going down. Okay, what else is happening? Next slide. Oh, the anxiety can be going up. Like, when is this going to get over? I got to get going. I have things to do. Or friends, when we have when we feel like there's a big issue that we haven't gotten to. So next slide. All right, that's it. Oreo's halfway through, Chris. When is it that you want to have the most important conversations in a vestry meeting? Put it in the chat. The start, right? Yeah, at the beginning, this is where it is. All right. And I'm not talking about like the agenda and the minutes, right? Okay, keep going. Next slide. Okay, I want you to, for a minute, think about your vestry's agenda. And I'm not talking about the minutes and the agenda itself. What are your first two significant pieces that you address typically at your vestry meetings? What do you got at the beginning? Financials. Okay, rector's report. Yep, what else? Opening prayer. And building. Oh, the building. Oof. All right. Okay. Check in. Bible study. Good. Spiritual wellness. Good. Spiritual formation. Great. Okay. I want to do goals. What's not on the agenda? Oof. If I don't know, I'm going to say this about what's not on the agenda. If I don't know beforehand, it doesn't get to go on the agenda, right? That's why you have pre-meetings. That's why you invite the wardens and the priest get together and set the agenda a week ahead, and you're inviting everybody to get the stuff on beforehand. Okay, what's happening with the capital campaign? All right, let me do this. Let's go. I want to do a word about finances. Next slide there. Many congregations put finances as their first or second issue, first or second thing on the agenda. And I think the tough thing about that is usually by about March. I used to think it was a good year in my congregations if we were still ahead by March in our income. But I'm going to say typically we were always behind by March. And then we got all of the income. We got a bunch of the income, a chunk of it in November and December. Um, and so the problem is, even if it is the scheduling of the treasurer, so maybe the treasurer isn't the one who is presenting the financials. Maybe someone from the finance committee is. The thing is, if you put the financials in the beginning, we have all of these conversations about where we are and how we're behind, and then usually what happens is that we just kind of feel bad because we're behind. And at the end of our conversation about the financials, we don't actually have any more money than we had at the beginning of the conversation. And I would say, not no money, no mission. It is exactly the opposite, dear friends. Mission. Money follows mission. Money is your last concern. Mission is your first. And I can love to have more conversation about that. And I'm not advocating that we ignore our finances by any means. But what I am saying is that you have some people, a finance group, not just the treasurer. You have the clergy and a couple of other people who are gathering to have conversation about the financials, have an idea where they are, not at the vestry meeting, right? And then that group then is able to bring, even if it's just a couple, 3 people, to bring the news to the vestry. And I always put the financials at the end, because again, you don't have any more money at the end of your conversation about the financials. I put them at the end, except for the January meeting, which is the annual, usually when you've got your annual meeting. And then the finances are front and center, because then you're really looking at this budget that people have developed. And then the vestry's weighing in, and I would have every single person on the vestry vote on the budget. I agree with the budget, I disagree with the budget, and to say why, so that everybody was on record how they felt about the budget that had been presented. So another piece that I think is super important is that people that who is pledging is that when someone is pledged, what I want, what I long for, what I invite you to consider doing is having members of the vestry, um, and the priest is included in this, do handwritten thank you notes to the people who have pledged. Handwritten thank you notes saying, "Dear Bonnie, thank you so very much for your pledge of, 5,000, blah, blah, blah. Because of this pledge of 5,000 for the year, we will be able to do this and this and this. Thank you." Right? If you get a handwritten note and you're very clear as to what the person has pledged, people feel seen and known, right? Um, um, Impersonal thank you notes are just that. They're impersonal, generic thank you notes. And we want to be relational. One of the things, and so it would be we do that after we've done our pledge campaign. So the December, January vestry meetings or the February vestry meeting, we're all sitting around just writing notes, right? We spent like 20 minutes, everybody wrote notes. And then the other thing is we would have quarterly notes that would be sent out, your quarterly, like, here's where we are. And those, we want them to be designed so they don't look like a bill, right? So limiting who knows, it is a confined group who knows who's pledging. But the rector certainly knows. The priest knows what everyone is pledging. If the rector knows everything else that is going on in people's lives, right? The priest knows when you're sick. I know when you're getting divorced. I know when your kid's having problems, right? I know this, and I am trusted with this. And what people are giving financially, I'm also trusted with this, because and if that changes, then that also, that's a sign of what's going on in people's lives, right? And then you can hold that and sometimes say, well, then some people will have favorites. And I can rest assured, friends, the people that the clergy have favorites are the ones who show up on a vestry call like this. Those are the favorites. The people who show up and do a yard cleanup. Those are your favorites. But if you And so, the finance committee, perfectly happy with folks knowing, right? And they hold that. You know these people, they hold that. They're not spreading that. But what it does is it takes it out of, money is morally neutral, and it's not, I think we load it with too much worth sometimes, right? Um, and so you're going to decide who's gonna know, but for sure the finance committee's going to know who's pledging what, right? And your rector's going to know. Absolutely. Um, um, let's see. Okay, and then let's do a word about executive sessions, right? Sometimes we go into executive session. And executive sessions are when you're meeting without the clergy person. Um, and and so this is what I'm going to say, and because someone says nothing a vestry does should be done in secret. Yes, and sometimes we have executive sessions when one, the priest is always going to know you're having them. You've checked it out with them and said when you're doing it. And this is going to be a part frequently when we would have executive sessions in my world, is when they were discussing my salary. Right. And I would usually kind of like negotiate my salary for like in 3-year increments. But then and we would have that set and kind of an ongoing letter. Um, but what, but when they were really discussing what and how exactly what they were going to pay me that year, I would know that was going to be an executive session, and I would step out of the meeting, and they would have that meeting, or they would have, and when and if an executive session is fraught, friends, right? And that's always a little anxiety provoking when you deciding how much you're going to pay your priest, right? That's a little when do you want to put it in the meeting? When do you want to do those executive sessions, friends? Do you want to do them at the end of the meeting before everybody goes home and you got everything else done and then you go into it? Yeah, Kim. Thank you, Kim. You're going to do it at the beginning. You're going to do it early, right? Because the anxiety is building and you don't want the anxiety to build, right? So get it done in the beginning. We used to like, oh yeah, we'll do the whole thing and then Bonnie can leave and we can just do that. Oh my goodness, it was just not that fun, right? So you're going to do the executive session at the beginning of the meeting, um, right? Um, and then, and let's see, was my compensation ever reduced? Well, they forgot to pay my FICA one year. And then I noticed it. No, but it was flatlined for a bunch of years. Yeah, the recession, the 2008 recession, that wasn't great. Um, but no, my compensation wasn't ever reduced. Um, and that's a piece, friends. Everyone needs to be paying attention to those compensation pieces. But what you're but and then but then and then let and then you're going to have a record of that executive session, and it's going to say, and we discussed the priest compensation and decided boom, or we discussed this and decided that, right? You're going to say what you decided, but you're not going to have verbatim minutes, right? And we shouldn't have verbatim minutes anyways. Um, so and although I did once, we did, it was kind of funny. We were on a kick where we wanted to get the minutes into the newsletter. And because we wanted them to be timely. So they went into the newsletter, and then somehow or another, the entire executive session minutes went into the newsletter, which that was actually pretty entertaining reading. but we was great actually. And my associate was like, why did I leave if we're just gonna publish these? So anyway, friends. Okay. Um, so what's the business of the church? Because this is a business session. Um, so what's the business of the church? Anybody? There you go. Good job, John. Business of the church is prayer. So what's the first thing we want to do at a vestry meeting? Prayer. And friends, if the prayer is a as I did today, that was a lovely little piece. But if it's just that, then that's the level of depth and vulnerability you're going to get at the meeting. When I'm talking about prayer, I'm talking about in-depth 45 minutes of Bible study and prayer. This is what we used to do. We do 45 minutes of Bible study and prayer, reading a passage over a couple of times, having people talk about where it fit in their lives, and then having folks say, this is where in my life and in the world I long for prayer. And then we would pray aloud for the person next to us. And it took 45 minutes. But what happened is we became a small community. We became this nurturing community that was the governing body. So we spent that time, and so we had the depth. And it also enabled us to have an idea of where various vestry people were as they were running in from work. And we had one fellow, Byron, came running in, and we got to prayer, and he was just in a horrible state. And he just said, I just bought a condominium. It was the first one he'd ever bought. He's mid-30s guy. And he said, I just think I've made the biggest mistake of my life. Right? Later on in the meeting, when we got to finances at the end and we were 4,000 behind, Byron was so upset. He thought we were so fiscally irresponsible. But kind of all of us knew that this wasn't really about us. This was about Byron's anxiety. So when we have that prayer, we're able to be vulnerable. We're able to hold each other. And we're also sometimes able to understand what might be going on in a person's life. So first thing is prayer. The next thing, next piece. What's the big audacious thing that you're working on? And then I'll wait, let me get to Claire. So summarize executive sessions. Executive sessions, friends, happen when you are going to have a conversation that probably is about the priest. You are going to tell the priest that you are doing that. You're going to tell them what you're talking about. You're going to tell them what the issue is. And then after you have and probably it is compensation, right? And if things are not going well, you're going to say, then if things are not going well, the first thing you're going to do is not have an executive session without them. The first thing you're going to do is have a whole conversation, wardens and clergy. You're going to reach out to my staff, to Ellen, or Susie, myself, right? And then you're going to have a conversation, and then you'll have a conversation with vestry. So that's not, we're going to go right away, right? Because that's escalating when there could be just misunderstandings. So typically, executive session is going to be about, typically it's about compensation, and then you're going to tell them what it is afterwards. So, so the next piece after prayers, what's the big audacious thing you're working on? What's the piece of mission that you're trying to implement? What's the thing, the hurt in the world that you are addressing? And this is the piece you really want to tackle with high engagement, high blood sugar, low anxiety. And this is where you want to put your energy. Um, and then after you've done all that, you can talk about the rummage sale and the parking lot and the heating pipe that needs to be replaced and the sign out front that's not working. That all comes after you've had deep prayer and after you've talked about the hurt in the world that you are addressing. Um, right? Yeah, so the needs of an aging congregation, you can have that. And I'm going to say, in addition, friends, needs of an aging community. If all of our conversation is just internally focused, then we will be great with the people we have already, but we will not, but we will be kind of like limited to that kind of small experience and not going into the world and doing the ministry. So needs of an aging congregation, yes. And what is going on in the community? How are we addressing it? Internally focused vestry conversations makes for internal ministry, makes for congregations that are not hubs of their community. Yeah. All right. All right. Thoughts, questions? Prayers?
Bishop, are executive sessions always without a priest?
Not always. Not always. So, sometimes, thanks, Ellen. Sometimes they're going to be, they are with the vestry and the priest, and they want to have conversation that they do not want, it is sensitive for a variety of reasons. There may dynamics that may be happening, and that they can decide to call that vestry meeting with the priest and the vestry and not other people. So you wouldn't, like, the treasurer's not a member of the vestry, the treasurer wouldn't be there. Secretary's not a member of the vestry, then someone else is taking the minutes, right? Yeah, I think I think that it's never been an issue for me, but I've been on vestries that acted like it was a sin to vote no on anything or to have substantive discussion. I would love, friends, I really want us to have substantive discussion. We can disagree without being disagreeable. Right? Other questions? All right, let's go to roles. Should vestry minutes be published to the congregation? Absolutely. And vestry meetings are open, right? Unless you go into an executive session, which is fine. The vestry can decide to do that. Um, so, but their vestry, of course, the minutes are published. Yeah. So, okay, let's talk, yep, when your discernment for the vestry is calling the new priest, that's an executive session. Yeah. So we can get to the social media question in a little bit. And different congregations and different dioceses have different requirements about that. I think you need to be able to, I think if you're going to publish anything on the website, anybody's picture, then you need to get permission. In my previous context, we only ever had pictures of the backs of kids' heads. We never had faces. Um, so, um, so I think you need to ask, right? And be very clear about interaction between adults and kids on social media, right? Okay, let's talk about roles. Okay, we're going to go to the canons for a minute. Let's go. Next slides. Okay, next slide. There we go. Administration. The member of the clergy in charge of the governing body of each congregation shall. Okay, this canon lays out clergy, wardens, and vestry work together for the administration of the community of faith. You know, and A through, you read A through J of the canons, it talks about to pay your apportionment. It talks about how you elect your wardens, how you elect your treasurer, your secretary. A word about treasurers and secretaries and wardens and vestry people. It shouldn't be the same folks all the time, right? It's really helpful to have folks, different people coming in and taking different roles. And it's lovely that someone says they'll do it and other people don't want to be the clerk, but it's really, really helpful for folks to step up and to share that responsibility. For one thing, you get different voices, different viewpoints, different perspectives, right? And that's the same for treasurers. I mean, it is a certain skill set, but I really don't think it needs to be vested continually in one person for many, many, many years. We really want to have different people taking on those roles. All right. So I want to talk about section H of this canon. Keep going. All right. The member of the clergy in charge and the governing body of each congregation shall exercise fiduciary responsibility for the property and assets of the congregation, administer the affairs of the congregation in accordance with these canons, and cause all church accounts to be audited annually. What this means, friends, is you are working together. You're working together. No treasurer can say to a clergy person, that no, you can't see this. No, that is not the deal. That is not the deal. We work together. And Jack is saying limited numbers of people with capabilities. Yes. And what I have found, if one person continues to inhabit a role, other people think they're not needed. But if you say we need someone for the role and you wait, then their space opens and people will begin to step forward, right? But know that in terms of the fiduciary responsibility, this is a joint process with the governing body assisting with the clergy, okay? And friends, the audits, all of our accounts to be audited annually. Some of our congregations do an internal review of books. Some of our congregations do an external. I believe that congregations with a budget of more than 700,000 should be having external audits. And yes, that does cost a sum of money, and I believe it is well spent. That's about $12,000 or so. And I believe it is well spent. And the majority of our congregations who have budgets over that do external audits. If you're doing an internal audit, the person who is the treasurer is not part of the audit team. If the treasurer does not get to audit their own work, that's a conflict of interest, right? External audits are required annually. If you're doing an external audit and you have a large budget, then you are paying for an external audit annually. So and friends, we have had embezzlements. We had a congregation 2 years ago that had $350,000 embezzled over a period of 7 years. that happened because that person was the only person, that person was trusted, and that person was the only person who was looking at online bank accounts. The treasurer was just receiving reports and not doing their own due diligence. There was no finance committee doing due diligence. And that congregation had all internal audits, but they never implemented the pieces. You know what? If even if it's a smaller congregation and they want to have an external audit, I would. I had external audits. I had external review of books, and my budget was about 600,000. And we paid about $7,000 every year. So, but what I want for our congregations, our smaller congregations, right? Have someone from another, and Chris and the audit group from trustees is working on getting together some people who are going to be able to assist and direct you to various folks nearby who can help you with these audits. But again, the treasurer does not get to be part of the audit team. Okay. And all we're doing, friends, is we are trusting and we are verifying, because I cannot tell you how hard it is when members of a congregation realize the money they have given has not been stewarded properly. And it's just really sad. And no one did it on purpose. Well, except for the person who was embezzling. But it's really sad. Um, um, in terms of bids, please get in touch with Chris Ventura. The bids we're seeing that Christchurch Cranbrook gave me and the cathedral were all in the $12,000 to $15,000 range, not the $24,000 range. The Zoom regarding audits, Margaret, we don't have that date yet, but Chris is getting together and working with, I forget who it was who got in touch with him, but that is in the process, So, and members of Vestry, when you get that audit and it says these are the things that need to be implemented, that's the vestry and clergy's responsibility to make sure they're implemented. Yeah, you're just being you're being prudent with people's money, and that's super important, because people give us money to do mission, right? We have the mission, the money comes. All right, next slide. So the duties of the warden: cooperate with, assist, and advise the member of the clergy in charge too, right? Cooperate, assist, and advise the member of the clergy to hear the concerns of the congregation, maintain a climate of mutual ministry, trust, and honesty, act as chief stewards and spiritual lay leaders of the congregation. And I love this one: to preserve order and decorum in and around the church on all occasions. So Anthony's asking about shift from senior and junior wardens to co-wardens. I've always lived with co-wardens. And I see in a number of congregations I encounter, it seems like the senior warden seems to be doing vision and planning, and the junior warden seems to be doing property. Sometimes the folks God gives to us to be those leaders may not want to do property, right? I mean, if they don't want to do vision, then I'm not sure they should be a warden. But if they may not want to do property, and I think it's perfectly fine to have somebody on the congregation who gets a kick out of doing property stuff. They don't have to be on the vestry. They don't have to be a warden. I think our co-wardens should be people who have and if you're gonna do a senior and junior, great, but I'm just saying, I don't think that has to be only about property. I think that that our mission and ministry is going to be where we want to get our leadership focused, and then how we use our building and our property to implement that ministry, right? I think about congregations that have, beautiful pantries, and they're drive-through pantries, right? And so, they need a parking lot that's not a mess. That makes sense. And so then you're thinking about the property in relation to the ministry. And I just don't know if you need administrative warden and property warden. I don't know if it has to be like that. What I'm trying to invite us to do is not limit leaders to one particular charism. Maybe what God is giving you, who God is giving you at this point to do those things, who want to be leaders, maybe they don't have those charisms. So I would really invite us to use the gifts God's given us instead of trying to fill holes. So I do. I think Robin's got it. We can share roles. So I don't know what the origin is. It's just something that, I don't know, we just did, right? Um, yeah. Okay. So another piece that happens is, and I encountered this with folks who had served on, no, wardens are not ex officio members of the vestry. They're elected members of the vestry. If I'm understanding your question, Rob, they're members of the vestry.
Do
And
they have to come from the vestry, or can they be elected from outside the elected vestry?
no, our canons are that you elect the vestry, and then the vestry elects the wardens.
From within?
Yep.
Okay.
So if you want those folks, then then have them run for the vestry. Yeah, that's it. Jim Treese, you got it. The junior warden had a heart for pastoral care, right? And this year the junior warden has a heart for outreach. Perfect. Yep. And Jack, you're completely right. You can have a buildings and grounds person outside the vestry. They want to work on the buildings and grounds. They don't want to go to the meetings, right? Or maybe they just, it's not always called the sexton. I didn't have a sexton. I just had a bunch of folks, men and women, who did stuff. Um, so, but let me go back to, when you're running the way we are designed, and it's slightly different from many not-for-profit boards. We are designed that the rector or the clergy person in charge runs the vestry. Runs the vestry meetings. They may cede that to one of the wardens. I frequently did, because I take up a lot of space, and it was better for me to have a quieter role and to give other people space to lead. But I didn't do that in my first 7 years. I did that my last 20 years. In that particular parish. In the other 3 parishes I served, I led the vestry meetings. So the rector, and the rector only votes in a tie, or the priest in charge votes in a tie, but they are a member, and they do run the vestry meetings. So, and and any bylaws, friends, church bylaws that are in conflict with diocesan canons, those bylaws don't have sway. Canons trump bylaws, and national canons trump diocesan canons. So there is some individuality in how these play out. And the diocese help with bylaw updates. Yeah, absolutely. And streamlining them is not a bad idea. So next one, the wardens perform and exercise the temporal duties and powers of the clergy in the absence of the members of the clergy in charge as provided by the canons. If you don't have a clergy person in charge, then your wardens are doing those pieces. Yep. And in terms of things to put on the agenda, friends, on our vestry agendas, not everything needs to go on. It needs to be matters of import. Oh, I remember once, this was back in the day, way back in the day, and I wanted the congregation to pay for my internet, right? We didn't have it at the church. And I remember I put it on, and I had AOL back in the day. And there was this huge long conversation about internet, and it went on and on and on. And it was at the end of the meeting, and it was really clear that there's an old joke about something you put on the agenda, and if you can be going to a governing meeting and they've got the thermonuclear reactor, and should we do this, and blah 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 blah, and everybody says yes, and then it's like, oh, we're going to have the DNA gene splicer, blah 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 blah, and everybody votes yes, and then the last item on the agenda is, and finally, lastly, friends, this is not a really big deal, but we want to have an aluminum ladder, a fire escape ladder, everybody in favor, and people are like, well, no, if it's aluminum, it'll be too hot and it'll melt in a fire. And then somebody else said it needs to be wood, and somebody said, well, that's ridiculous because the wood won't melt. And the thing went on and on and on, and they couldn't come to consensus about the fire escape ladder, and they wound up tabling it. And the moral of the story is nobody understood the thermonuclear reactor. Nobody understood the gene splice thing, but they understood the fire escape ladder, and they had come to the meeting. And so by God, they were going to offer an opinion. I felt like that was a little bit with my internet. And eventually, as that whole conversation went, guy leaned over, who was the treasurer. He just leaned over to me and he said, oh, for God's sakes, Bonnie, I'll pay the $25 a month. And that was my learning. Oh, I just never should put it on the agenda. It was not a big deal. So think about how and what we're doing. Okay, friends, we've got Ellen, do we have about 10 minutes for questions if we want to?
Yep, you got about now 7 minutes.
Oh, friends, we have 7 minutes. What you got? Things I could have said clearer. Things you disagree with? What are the canons numbers referring to? Those are the numbers in the canons. Canon 1, section 1, subpoint A, subpoint B.
What's a canon?
What's a canon? Oh, these are the canons. The canons are the laws of the church.
Where do you find those?
Huh?
Where do you
They're
find
online.
those?
You can go online to the diocesan website and you can Google diocesan canons and get a copy.
Thank you.
It's super, super interesting reading. You can also, I think, Dennis, can you go online and get a copy of the national canons too? There. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Jaden and Carmen. I'm going to say you guys were actually like right there, same minute, right? The treasurer and secretary and clerk do not need to be members of the vestry. That is correct. Yep, there you go. A vestry handbook. I don't think we do have a published vestry handbook. The Diocese of Michigan canons are reviewed and revised, friends, at every convention. Many of you will know of that as Bob Altock chairs that committee, and it is a fan favorite when he comes up. I've never really seen a canonical committee with such a fan base. Vary from the national and why. The state canons sometimes state canons have to take into effect state law. New York law is super particular about churches, right? Michigan law, less so, right? So you've got to have, so the canons have to be applicable for the state in which you're incorporated. Okay, what clergy and other support resources available when a rector retires? What do you do for interim search? So when you have a rector retiring, then Susie Schaefer and Ellen Ekevog are your people to assist with that. And we have lots and lots and lots of resources. Well, I mean, I think Robin, I think we're going to look at viability and vitality when we have tiny places, right? We look at, and that the vestry membership is the same because it's small. So we're gonna address a bit of that, and it's a real issue, right? Okay, and Chris, you put it, oh, vestry pages from the Episcopal Church Foundation. Good fun stuff. Vestry resource guide. Yep. There you go. What else? Yep. Susie's got the overview of the search process, vestry resource guide. What else? Yeah, so Jaden's asking about the other Christians, and that's another piece. So I'll do that for just a tiny bit. What I want, Jaden has asked about something called the other Christians, and this is a piece I've spoken about a little bit on our leadership calls, and there's a theological group that's getting together at this point. And what I'm looking for is the Episcopal churches in the Diocese of Michigan's response to the rise of Christian nationalism, but to be very clear to people of what Christian nationalism is a political ideology that I think we are seeing more in and in levels of government with the notion of that this is a Christian nation, and we were founded with a separation of church and state. That said, friends, the Episcopal Church is a church of welcome and inclusion, a church that is going to go out of its way for people on the margins. And what I want for us is to be able for people to understand that what scripture is saying about refugees and immigrants and migrants, to be really clear about our welcome and our care. And that's not a political stance, it's a gospel stance. So we'll see more about what, and I think in many ways the other Christians, the Episcopal, that we're the other Christians, we're the ones who will welcome and care. is a way for people who do not know the Episcopal Church, but can, in fact, particularly because of Bishop Buddy's sermon and preaching, will understand that we have a different stance. The Archbishop of Canterbury, yeah, they don't talk to me about that. I have no idea what they're doing. Yeah, and I think Sean Rowe is our new presiding bishop. I think he's doing an amazing job. Uh, Anthony, good. That's a great question. Anything about whether there should be a relationship between the vestry and other committees in a parish? Um, I believe that the vestry is the place setting vision and governing group in conjunction with the priest. And so other committees should be in relationship with them. They should be funneling information. They should be chatting with each other. I don't necessarily think you need a liaison. Some vestries are structured that that person is the church school liaison. I don't think you need to necessarily do that, because then when that person leaves, you feel like you have to find someone to fill that hole. Again, I think our people on the vestry should be who's called, who have the gifts, and we structure our ministry around the gifts of the people who are leading at that moment. But you're not, other groups are not acting independently. So you're not going to say, hey, let's have a ministry fair and not tell the vestry, right? We're going to have conversation and we're going to design that together. Um, uh, I don't know if they charter and report back. I think you need to have open flow of communication. Some of that open flow of communication can be that you're updating the priest in charge on what's going on, and the priest in charge is offering some insights, or they could tell one of the wardens and they can offer insights. So I don't think it needs to be super formal, but the flow of information is essential. I don't think you need to have to purchase the canons. I think you can just download them, Kath. But church publishing might have them. I have no idea. All right. All right, friends. We could keep going on this, but it is now 10:22, and I was supposed to stop at 10:20. Okay. Next. Who's up next? Thank you.
So next, we have Sister V to talk about vestry member. We're going to start a series on things vestry members should know. So the first thing is around anti-racism training. So Sister V, take it away. Sister V?
Okay, yeah, sorry, almost forgot to unmute myself there. I was intent on sharing my screen. All right. So we have a diocesan anti-racism curriculum, and anti-racism was conceived as being part of ongoing spiritual formation to become beloved community and to care for one another. It's how we equip ourselves to serve those we encounter in our neighborhoods, in our pews, and in our ministries. And it's an essential tool to learn how to pray and how to act in the way of love. So this actually began back in 2000 as an act of General Convention. It was reaffirmed in 2018. And they acknowledged during General Convention, we acknowledged that the work of dismantling racism is an essential part of spiritual formation. And the lay and ordained leadership of the Episcopal Church are also expected to engage in ongoing spiritual formation and education focused on racial healing, justice, and reconciliation as part of our church's commitment to becoming beloved community. So those are where the national church has required us to take anti-racism training. So they reaffirmed the necessity and importance of this training for the lay and ordained leadership of the Episcopal Church. And who is that? That includes all ordained persons, professional staff, and those elected or appointed to committees, commissions, agencies, task forces, and boards. So basically, all of our leadership is required to take anti-racism training. And this is in support of becoming beloved community, as stated before. And the 4 quadrants of becoming beloved community are truth-telling, proclamation, formation, and justice. And so anti-racism training comes in at formation. And this is an expectation of all leadership, lay and ordained, within the church. So here in our diocese, we have an anti-racism curriculum that's been developed for us. It comes in 3 modules. We tried to make it as time and schedule friendly as possible. So it engages in different media, reading, podcasts, some documentaries that you can watch on your own time. And each module concludes in a facilitated conversation that takes about an hour. So we have these 3 modules. You'll see on the screen what the schedule is for the next anti-racism training. I have learned that it's best to schedule these after we elect our vestries to give you guys a chance to kind of get oriented and then get the materials and see which ones you want to engage with before participating in the concluding conversation for each module. So that is our schedule coming up for this next session of the anti-racism curriculum for our diocese. And it was intended that anti-racism training would be an ongoing spiritual formation. So there are other ways to engage if you've already taken anti-racism training to continue this ongoing spiritual formation. So we do have diocesan book studies. We have been focusing on both Indigenous voices and voices of African descent. During those book studies, we have a civil rights pilgrimage that we will hopefully be doing every single year. Also, I want to highlight, Bishop Bonnie was talking about things relevant to your context as a congregation. If you would like any kind of anti-racism training that really focuses on your own context within your congregation, please contact me. I am more than happy to craft something with you and your leadership that will be meaningful and relevant to you, because it's really important when you're engaging with your neighbors and your community that it matters to the people who are around you and the people you're doing ministry with. So yes, please sign up for the anti-racism curriculum, and if you want something specific for your context, please contact me and we can work on that together. So it is required for all of our lay and ordained leadership. Let me know how you want to engage with that, whether you want to do it as a cohort in your congregation, or you can sign up there for this next session on our website. So that's all I have to say about our anti-racism curriculum. Any questions that I need to field?
Sister V, if the 3 modules required if they completed Sacred Ground.
So if you completed Sacred Ground, you have already completed Module 1, and you can join us at Module 2.
Thank you. All right. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Sister V. What is Sacred Ground? Email Sister V. Or do you want to say 2 seconds about it?
2 seconds about it. Sacred Ground is something the National Church formulated. It is a wonderful program. It lasts 10 to 12 sessions, so it's a pretty big time commitment, but it is an absolutely wonderful program, and I can always give you more information on that.
Yeah. Are all 3 modules required?
Yes.
Yes. So I would invite everyone, if you have questions, go to the website. Can we put the website in there in the chat for people to look at it? You'll see it's in all 3 modules. And then if you have further questions, just reach out to Sister V. She's happy to help you guys with that. Next, we got Safe Church with Carmen Piggins.
Hello. So my name's Carmen. I get to talk to you about everyone's favorite, Safe Church. So Safe Church is safe church, safe communities, And this is a training that really helps us to like norm and create shared language and shared expectations in our congregations. It is not solely focused, but does support with working with children, youth, and vulnerable adults. Um, in about 2020, we switched over to a virtual system. So there are kind of a few paths and options you can go. So there are 8 modules. If you are a vestry or bishops committee, you are required to do the 4 universal and 4 specialty models. And if you do those independently through Presidium, it's about 3 hours. You can also do each module like separately. So you can, get home from work, do one module, and then come back and do another one later. And they are required every 3 years. And then there's a couple options or routes for completing this. So you can do it individually through Presidium, and all the information, including your congregational code, is on our website. You can also do group viewings at your congregation. So if like your whole vestry wanted to get together, or if a committee wanted to get together and do it, that is an option. And then there's a link on our website that you would just submit to me, and I would then get your transcripts updated. And our last is if you really just love, like some people have told me they just love being in a group and doing this together and being able to have discussions. We do run 2 to 3 diocesan in-person trainings that are usually 10 to 3. And lucky for you, we have one coming up next Saturday. So if you're just like, I really want to spend more time with Carmen, we will be doing an in-person training at Wyandotte, at St. Stephen's Wyandotte. So especially if you're in the Downriver area and you just want to be with a group, bring your sack lunch, and we'll go from 10 to 3, and you'll have all 8 modules completed by the time that you leave. If you have any questions, or if you're having a hard time in any way with accessing, accidentally taking it in Portuguese or anything like that, please just reach out to me, email or phone, and I'll get back to you and get you squared away. Both the specialty and universal modules are required for our vestry members. And on our website, so our website kind of has all the things. It also has lists of like who is required to do what modules. And if you're ever unsure, just reach out to me. We're trying to make it as easy to do, and also there's a lot of pieces. So feel free, drop any questions in the chat. I'll answer them in there. And yeah, let me know if there's anything I can do to support you in helping make our congregations a safe place.
Thanks, Carmen. Okay, next is we're going to talk about one of the things we all love, a parochial report. Susie.
All right, everybody. We'll make this short because I think this is what's between us and a break. Parochial reports, for those of you who are brand new to vestry, are the way the Episcopal Church gathers annual statistics. So when people say things like, we have an average Sunday attendance of 73, this report is how everybody figures that out. It's done entirely online, and vestries need to approve the report, which needs to happen before March 1st, because parochial reports are due by March 1st. This year, you'll see if you've gone in already, especially treasurers and clergy or admins who might be working on this, they've made some changes to the form this year. And so in response to that, we have a diocesan supplemental form that is needed this year, which we're also asking you to do by March 1st. And Dennis has just put a shorter, easier link in the chat for you to do that. As I said, they have changed a few things about the parochial report this year. And so if you have questions about that, or you go to fill in your answers and you can't figure out how to log into the system, you can just reach out to me or to Ellen, and we'll be able to get you logged into the report and direct you to the questions that you need. And the filing report for the way to file is that website right there. And I have also found if you Google Episcopal Parochial Report, it will get you to the right place.
Okay, great. So we have a lot we want to go through. So I'm just hoping everyone is taking care of their individual needs. Remember, this is videoed, but I'm going to give everybody like a 2-minute stretch break. So seize the moment. Go stretch your limbs. Go warm up your coffee. You can turn off your screen for a second, and then I'll call us back when we're going to continue on. Okay, if everyone can return, and for those of you who are willing to let us see your face, turn back on your screen. That would be great. So we're going to take probably the next 10 to 15 minutes just to update you about from our diocesan convention, kind of our next steps in as we're thinking about reparations. So this is just really good information for the vestry, something that we're going to ask you all to be thinking about and working on. So Sister V.
Okay. Let me share my screen. So we are looking at reparations, and we're choosing the theme of repairing the breach, which has been used a lot by many organizations in the church and outside of the church to give context to why we are repairing what has been broken and what has been just kind of disconnected about our common humanity, really, but also as a people of the church. So that's just our kind of our overview is that passage from Isaiah 58, verses 9 through 12. And did not mean to do that. Hit the wrong button, but that's okay. There we go. So our focus as the church on reparations began well before these acts of convention, but the acts of convention we look to for reparations come from 2006 and 2009. And it was a church expressing its apology and regrets for not only the support of slavery, but the continued support for segregation and discrimination that occurred in its aftermath. And so the Episcopal Church apologized for its complicity in and the injury done by the institution of slavery and its aftermath. And as the convention looked at this, the convention encouraged each diocese to continue a process of gathering information in its community on the complicity of our church and our diocese in the institution of slavery and in the subsequent history of segregation and discrimination that occurred afterward. So this was kind of where we started with these resolutions in 2006 and 2009. What we're doing in our diocese is we're looking at our communities and identifying where we see the legacy of racialized injustice at work in the present. And that's what we're using to focus ourselves on where we see repair needing to be made. So the places that need to be repaired in our communities are things like health disparities, education, housing, and voting access. Those are the first four that we're going to be looking at. And this is about our accountability as people of faith to our sisters, brothers, and siblings who experience injustice. And so it's very much about what we see around us now that is broken and needs repair, and also looking at its historical roots. So we kicked off this next phase of our reparations ministries that we're in at Diocesan Convention in 2024, just last year, with our wonderful guest speaker, Bishop Sutton from Maryland. So by convention of this year, 2025, your Reparations Steering Committee hopes to identify community partners to work with in our focus areas that I just mentioned. We would love to have a working history of our diocese as regards racism and racial repair. And we also want to support individual congregations in researching their own history. So the steering committee is starting that work. We're starting all three of these areas right now. And one thing that we're doing, we're working with Jamal Dillman Hasso, who is our archivist historian. And he is helping us look at the broader history around our communities and see how they're reflected in the history of our individual congregations so that we can understand why our communities look the way they do, who had what kind of jobs, what happened, in relation to things like the civil rights movement, or, what did redlining look like? How did it affect our communities and its makeup? So I'm leaning a lot on Jamal's gifts as a historian to help us shape what looking at our own history will come to be. So that is what we're working on right now. And I just wanted to put in a plug. If you're interested in looking at the history of your own congregation and your own community, save the date for May 19th. Our historian, Jamal Dillman Hasso, will be giving us a presentation at the Bentley Library in Ann Arbor, where we keep our diocesan archives to help you to kind of familiarize you with what kind of resources you have to look at your own congregation's history. So that is where we are at the moment as your reparations steering committee. And we have a wonderful group of people and we're working really hard, but we really want to make sure that this is meaningful and helpful to you. And if you have any questions, if you need any support in looking at the history of your own congregation, please get in touch with me. We have some very gifted people from our diocese who are helping out in this work.
Thank you, Sister V. So this is one of the things we'd like for vestries. You don't have to do it yourself. You can appoint someone who's like super into archives and research to figure out, what's your congregational history. Bishop, do you want to say anything else about why this is important?
Actually, the bishop just asked me what time at the Bentley Library. It's at 6 p.m. on May 19th.
Okay, 6 p.m., May 19th. Anything else important, Bishop, that you'd like to say?
As this is going to be, it's all of a piece, friends, and it's all of a piece of us understanding of who and how we are as people of faith in this context, and where the Episcopal Church has been with this issue, and where we have all been in the state of Michigan in the midst of redlining, in the midst of working against racism. And I think that we're an amazing country, and I think in, I think that racial disparities and the sin of racism is in the DNA of this country. And I think people of faith like us are called to work against it. And it's not easy. And this, friends, some people always talk about it as justice work. I think it's spiritual work. I think this is deeply spiritual work that will have implications that will move us towards a more just society. But I engage in this work because I need it for my soul. And I invite you to join me in doing this all together. And that's why I asked Veronica, Sister V, to come and be on my staff as the canon for spirituality and race. So
Great. Thank you. So we're going to move to our next presentation, which is about congregational development, how to focus on ministry and not just maintenance. Susie, if you could just text me for time. We don't have a whole lot of time for this, but what I want to do and what I wanted to give you was some concrete sequential things and a lens in which to look at your congregation, to look at what your vestry is talking about and what you're doing, that can be helpful and can, I think we all share a goal that we want our congregations to be thriving. And so I'm creating this kind of lens and model for us to think about that and resources to go with that. So please hold. I always have to talk through when I share my screen. It's part of my charism. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. So, and I have to tell you, I'm using a second screen, so I'm like in a new technological era personally. But I want to talk about what is the definition of congregational development. You guys, you're like, what are we doing here? So this is really important. Congregational development is the development of congregations of all sizes, small, medium, large, all locations, rural, city, suburban, and all conditions. It is not meant just for, suburbans, medium-sized congregations. It's for everybody. It's for everybody. Into more faithful, healthy, and effective communities of faith. I know you're muted, but say it with me. Faithful, healthy, effective. That's what we're after here. And there are all kinds of different lenses that you can use. You'll often hear me say, if I've ever come to your church, we have a model for that. So these are all different ways to think about your place, to develop your place. And what I know is in the 1970s and 80s, congregational development is a very new field. There was like one lens for congregational development, which was like increase your ASA in the 70s and 80s. And that was like the trend in the field. How do we do that? And then in the 90s, they're like, wait a minute, there's other fruits of the spirit. There's other things that churches need to do to not just be like a consumer-based church, but to like be healthy. Like, are we creating healthy and vibrant disciples? ASA is average Sunday attendance. Thank you, everyone, for answering that. And so now we have a variety of research. So what I have done for this particular lens is I've done like a whole literature review. I've talked to all my colleagues who are working in research in this area. Some of it's published, some of it's not published. I'm happy to give you other resources, but this is what we know right now. Okay, so here's the lens. Okay, sorry. Let's go down here. Congregational viability and vitality. Okay, so here's what we know. The trends in the Episcopal Church, including like average attendance, follows and correlates to the birth rate in the United States almost directly. So it is, and that has been true since we've been looking at that data. So the arch is exactly the same. So I just want to say we know that piece. What we also found out in our recent research is that congregational development, and again, this is just one lens, can be thought of through what is viable, like our viability and our vitality. And now here's the other piece of information, resource. They do not correlate. And you're like, what do you mean, Ellen? I mean, they don't, just because you're viable doesn't mean you're vital, and just because you're vital doesn't mean you're viable. There is no correlation. And so one of the big take homes I want you guys to have is that vestries have to work on both. This is the latest research. You have to work on both. You have to work on viability and vitality. And I'm going to go into what each one of these means. And so what's important about this is, so for example, a church can be vital, but not have the resources, or not have all the resources they may need, but they're still doing vitality. Congregations can also be viable. They can have plenty of money, but not be doing the ministry. Does this make sense? Just give me a nod or thumbs up or something. Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to want you to do. If you don't have a piece of paper in front of you, try to find one. Because what I've done is I'm going to break this down. I'm going to define what this means. And then I have specific things that vestries can do. Now, I want to say this. You can't do everything at once. I think one of the problems in the church is that we say, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. And then we feel paralyzed because we're like, what do we do? Like, there's so much to do. What do we actually have energy for? Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about each thing. And then you're going to get a list of like things vestries can think about, talk about, or do. And after each list, and I'll remind you of this, I just want you to write the one thing down you would like your vestry to work on, or bishop's committee. You'll have to excuse me. I did these slides really fast. So if you have a bishop's committee, just insert that where you see vestry. Okay. Viability is not about how much you have. It's about alignment of resources. Alignment. This is all locations, all sizes, all conditions. For whatever we have, is it aligned? Is it aligned with our mission? Is it aligned with our needs? We take what we have, what God has given us, right? And we align it with where we're being called and what we need. So if you have a piece of paper, if you're playing along, you can write down viability equals alignment. You're like, Ellen, how fun. There are 3 components to viability. The first one is financial stability. Now I have a picture of the widow's mite, right here, right? Because again, it's not about how much, it's about alignment of what you have, right? So the key ideas here is that vestries are to steward and generate, like think about like how you use your building, and we'll get it more into this, resources. But you also want to be, particularly in this time, in our context, in our environment, in our culture, how do we be responsive to the changing needs and opportunities that are happening so that you can remain focused on your congregation's unique purpose as the expression of the body of Christ? That's the whole thing here, right? So it's not about wealth, it's about alignment. So we also, when we're thinking about this area of viability, we want to think about trust. How do we build trust? We want to think about transparency, and our mission. Okay, that was a lot. I'm saying a lot. Don't write any of that down. So next, I'm going to give you the list. And of course, there's more, but I just want to start with these things. So as I read them, I want you to write down the one that you want your vestry to work on. Establish and monitor a mission-aligned budget and steward it, making it transparent to the congregation. So how do you do your budget? What is the shape of that? For those of you who are at the TENS conference yesterday, TENS, which is the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, has some great resources on that. Chris, if you could just put in their website, and we have a diocesan membership. So you have access to all those resources if you're thinking about that. A compelling stewardship campaign. Also, they can help you with that. Also, the bishop is a really great thinking partner about that. What makes it compelling? A lot of things, but a couple of key things. Thank people and recognize them and create easy ways to give. Also, a lot of resources from TEDS. As a vestry, you're going to, of course, review financial statements, access to income expenses aligned with ministry goals. Adjust and adapt when changes or challenges or opportunities arise, ensuring flexibility in the face of change. One of the things we all need to be thinking about is, are our congregations flexible? In the church assessment tool, CAT, their data shows that flexibility, a congregation's flexibility, has a high correlation with that church's health and vitality too. So just note that. And then establish financial policies in accordance with the Manual of Best Financial Practices, which include an annual audit, which the bishop went over. So just write down one, just one. Because again, we can't do everything. Just what would be your top priority? And I'm going to keep moving here. So the next big piece is resource alignment. Let your light shine before others. That's what really resource alignment is about. It's about the resources, your collective assets, people, facilities, leadership, material resources. For those of you on here, whoever did asset-based community development, I forget which, or it's ABCD. Like this is kind of that thing. So you want to feel alignment in your resources between your fit and congregational size. And I can do a whole other thing. I have tons of resources on congregational size. So you want to think about what is our fit with those resources. So maybe we were like this big, like back in the 80s, and now we're this big. So the resource alignment is going to look different. When you right size things, that's actually an evangelical move because it creates more energy in your congregation to do the things that are really important. So right sizing is huge. And again, you want to, in your resource alignment, respond to challenges, have flexibility, and foster sort of collaboration and courageous decision making. So here's the list. So here's what we know. First, you want to identify and articulate your congregational resources. Like, do you actually know? We may think we know, but we may actually need to articulate this and articulate it not just for the vestry or the bishop's committee, but as we work as a congregation, right? Peoples, facilities, finances, leadership. This may include like a spiritual gifts inventory, which we have a model for that. We have resources for that. As a vestry, now than ever, doing long-term planning is going to be tough because of the volatility and the rate of change in our congregations. I would suggest to you to do winnable goals. So you may have a big goal, this huge goal, right? But what I want you to do is focus on the first step. And when I say winnable goal, I mean you tell everybody that is the goal, and then you celebrate that goal when you do the goal, right? People oftentimes, especially in medium-sized churches, will say the same people keep doing everything. That is a nature of size. So we just need to know that. And one of the things the vestry can think about is how do we invite and invite again and invite again members or volunteers to participate with easy on-ramps. Now, the resistance to that is that sometimes the people who have been doing things might need to let go of things. And they may not be done in quite the way that they want to be done. But you have to think about, where are we as a vestry? Is this a priority for us? Of course, making sure your spaces and grounds are maintained and welcoming, right? You also want to explore creative use. Yeah, again, when I say also, I mean pick one of these. I just want to be clear about that. Explore creative uses of space and community partners who can use your church space. So we need to, as congregations in this moment, think about, sometimes they're called anchor congregations, or like, how can the community use our space? How are we going to go out and talk to people and find out the needs? Because in a lot of our places, we have like pretty awesome spaces for people to use, like during the week. So we can actually, that is an asset we can like give back to our communities. And again, right size your ministry and programs for your congregational size. So after this presentation, when I get, I don't know, a couple hours, I'll also have all these listed with resources for each. And if you want to work on it before then, please just give me a call. So I want you to pick one. Pick one. Can't do everything, just one. And the last part of viability is this effective administration. So this is about aligning committees, vestries, governance to support based on your congregational size in particular, right? A smaller congregation cannot do what larger congregations do in terms of organization. Those are going to look different. This includes communication and decision making. There are different ways to make decisions than just yes or no. We have a variety of tools for that. To foster a culture of shared responsibility, forgiveness, and allowing leaders and members to navigate challenges. I think we all know, it feels like to me, I'll speak for myself, that life is tough, right? How are we giving our leaders grace? How are we supporting them? How does the congregation want to be informed? All of these things. Okay, here's the list. Just have regular meetings. Now, someone asked earlier, what happens if we don't have enough people to keep rotating roles in the way that larger churches do? That's okay. Try. Figure that out. What does that look like? Basically, you would, in an ideal situation, you want rotating roles and term limits. Ensure your policies, bylaws reflects the church's mission and values, law, canons, and encouraging flexibility when adapting to new challenges, right? So we can help you with that. You know, if you're thinking about your bylaws. Again, we're not going to do everything. We're going to do one thing. Organize committees, working groups in a way that makes sense for your congregational size and ministry. Right? And if you want more information, let me know. Decision-making processes that are clear and transparent. When people lack information, vestries, they will tell themselves stories about how decisions are made. So if you want to be communicating clearly how we are going to make that decision. Otherwise, people tell themselves stories. And I don't know about you, but I can come up with some very convincing, creative storytelling that may not be necessarily true. So it's good to be like super transparent, especially in those high stakes decisions. And we have tools for that. And we have ways of doing that where you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can take the wheel and then redesign it for your context and your place. Communication strategy with members, including listening and feedback practices. This includes mutual ministry reviews, right? Here's one thing I just want to say about email. Email discussions are so unhelpful. Do not do it. You're going to be tempted to. You're going to be like, this can just be an email and I'm going to send it out and we can. No, it's 9 times out of 10, it's going to backfire. And you want to know why? Because people always read negative intent into email. Always. That is how our brains are set up. It is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. Now, can you do simple yes or no's? Fine. It's up to your discretion and your discernment. Limit email discussions. Emails in vestry should be used for time and place of meeting. Okay? Always, in my personal opinion. You really want to limit it. It's just not helpful. Pick up the phone. That's better. Just pick up the phone. Because then you're actually talking to another person and you guys can figure out whatever the issue is together. And it's actually much quicker. You think, I'll just do a quick email. That is going to take so much more of your time. Just pick up the phone. And finally, vestries, over communicate. This can be one of the things that you work on this year. Now you're going to over communicate. You're going to put it in the newsletter. You're going to stand up on Sunday morning. You're going to, put a special flyer out. You're going to do all the things. And still someone will come up to you and say, no one told me. It is guaranteed to happen. And you know what we do when that happens? We smile. And we show them where the information is. Right? But to over communicate where you're almost like on your own nerves is probably the best thing to do. So I want you to pick one of those things and write it down. Okay, now look at your 3 things and choose which one is your top priority for your vestry and put it in the chat. And this can just be your opinion. What's the top thing that you want, the top priority, and put it in the chat. Stay in communication, creating winnable goals. Yes. Organized committees and working groups. Yeah. According to congregational size, community outreach. That's going to be more in vitality, but yeah. Yes. Right sizing, creative use of space. Yep. We're going to get to mission. That's vitality too. Yep. Flexibility, thinking and recognizing. Great. Personally, invite. Personal invitations. When you say, can anyone do this? That is a less effective way of getting people on board. Okay. Next, so that's vitality. That's the lens of vitality. That's the lens of viability. Right? That's just that piece. Now, vestries, you also have to pay attention to viability. Vitality is about identity, mission, and impact. Okay. And when I say identity, I mean articulating your identity. You may know who you are, but can you and your people articulate it? Okay. So the first piece of this is, can you guys see that? Is congregational vocation. And what I mean by that is this Frederick Buechner quote: "The place God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." What we know from the research is that our most vital congregations have one major ministry that they do for their local community. And so in this model, it's identifying who is our congregation, what gifts are offered, what is our deep gladness, and then really doing some looking and researching in our own community, what is the need that then we can meet. And do you see in that middle, that is God's call. Now, you don't have to come up with a process to figure this out. We have a process. If you're thinking about, we really need to find out what our congregational vocation is in our community, we have a process for that and resources for that. That is not something that you need to recreate the wheel on. So what is the list? And again, please write down one thing. Remember, congregations don't simply exist. We exist within a community. So can your congregation actually articulate their Episcopal identity? And again, we have a model for that. We have a way of doing that. Can the congregation and leadership articulate your particular values and priorities? Can you all actually articulate what your values and priorities are and use those for the vestry to make decisions as a lens to make decisions on? Like, are our decisions aligning with our values? And we have a way of doing that. We have a model for that. The congregations discern the need they want to meet in their community, which is aligned with their resources and deep gladness. Right? That's another area you can work on. To create a variety of ways for people to participate and contribute in that ministry. Right? A lot of our places are aging congregations. So that has to be factored in with our deep gladness and our resource alignment. Right? I served one church in Hickman, Kentucky. And this was a congregation of 10 to 12 people. Well, when I got there, there was 6. So I always said, like, if I could report percentages, I would look amazing. But anyway, so they were trying to figure out what is our congregational vocation, right? And looking at the members, and they decided actually, like, there's a bunch of people who are like loving like knitting and stuff, and that they were just gonna like, they did have like a local hospital because it was the county seat of that county, and that they just was like, that's the partner we work with. That's who they created all these prayer ministries. They were like knitting blankets, and they were known. I mean, we grew, and they were known for that. Like, it doesn't matter your size. You have to think about what is our call in this place, and you want to talk about it. Episcopalians, as a cradle Episcopalian myself, that means I was born into the Episcopal Church. We hide our lights under bushels. We're not awesome at talking about it. One author calls it Anglican modesty. What I want us to encourage us is to say yes, and we actually can talk about and articulate who we are and what we're doing and what makes us awesome. I always feel like the Episcopal Church is like the best kept secret in every town, and we need to start telling our secrets. We need to start telling people. So how do we talk about it, advertise it, shine your light? So pick one thing. Transformative worship. Now, you're like, but we're vestry. We're not in charge of worship. That's true. But as a vestry member and leader, have your eye on it. So when I present this list, these may be things we want to talk about, right? With and working with, as the bishop pointed out, the vestries to work in collaboration with the clergy. To like, this is a main point. This is one of the main drivers of vitality in churches. Okay, so sacramental depth, not just offering the sacraments, but preparing for them in a way that invites personal and communal transformation. Liturgy, remember, is the work of the people. It invites, so you like in our liturgy, like, are we inviting active involvement through prayers, hymns, responses, a spiritual purpose? One of our key models we have for this talks about just how introducing a little bit of silence in liturgy actually increases the transformative power of that liturgy. So I know some of you kind of have like a moment of silence after the preacher or something. Just kind of note that. You want liturgy that is timely, meaning that includes what people's on their mind from context and world. Lord knows we have plenty to pray about. And engaging preaching, sermons that connect to the scripture and real life issues. Now you say, Ellen, are you going to tell us which one to work on? Kind of, for this slide. Leaders and vestry committees and other groups that cultivate worship and Bible study practices that are nourishing. If the leaders aren't being nourished and transformed, if it's not centered in leadership, then it's really not going to happen, because what our research shows is that churches can't develop further than the leaders are developed. That is correlated. So think about, are we creating moments of us sharing, of us having, prayer that has like meaning and access to our hearts and minds? Are we sharing concerns? And it doesn't have to take long. It could be everybody do a 2-word check-in, and then someone holds that up and says a prayer, right? It's like, it doesn't have to take forever. It can also take, Bishop, how long was your Bible study? 45 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah. Right? We're all in different places and different contexts. But if you're not working on that, or at least starting to figure out where we can fit that in, you've got to do it. It matters. As the bishop has said, the business of the church is prayer. Everyone should have said prayer. Let's try. I just want to see mouths move. The business of the church is prayer. Thank you. Okay, good. I want to drive that home. Practices of belonging. You never know how God will use something you say to impact someone else's faith. Like, we are not just about going to church, we're about being practicing Christians and about creating communities of practice and belonging. Okay, I've lost my mouse. There we go. So here's some things that we know. Speaking faithfully. The highest correlation between vitality and other practices is actually speaking faithfully. And what I mean by that is that your congregation is teaching and encouraging people to talk about their faith and their stories. We are, again, this is a growing edge for us, right? As Episcopalians, right? But we know that vitality is driven by these practices of allowing us to say, hey, here's our doubts, here's our fears, here's also where God showed up for me this week. Kit Carlson has done a whole project on this. So if you want to read her book, it's great. I forget what it's called. Susie, do you remember? And you can put it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. And also, St. Patrick's Madison Heights does this thing where they do God moments every week. It's transformative. It's transformative. This is actually where people feel like they belong. And sometimes we have to make it safe and start giving people language for how we do that. Maybe even try to practice that in your vestry. It's really important. Intentional gathering. So vestry, pay attention. How are we inviting, greeting, and orienting and incorporating people? And you're like, but Ellen, we don't have a lot of newcomers. That's okay. You still need to figure out how you invite, greet, orient, and incorporate. We have a model for that. You don't need to create something else. This is harder. How are we as a vestry going to create space for dissent and honest dialogue to talk about the things and address the conflict and pinches early on? This actually creates belonging. When someone knows I can disagree and still be in relationship, that we can actually figure this out together. Thank you, Chris. Yes, also Church Next. Lots of great resources, right? There are ways to facilitate that in a way that is safe for people. I think because some of us, well, I'm married to a Swede, and I know that some we don't like to talk about things. It's hard. I know it's hard, but there's actually safe ways that and structures of conversation we can do to do that. So if that's one of the things you want your vestry to work on, let me know. Celebrate. Susie, do you remember the quote from that one seminary professor about being fun?
Yeah, it was a professor from Fuller. The effect of the quote is it's hard to tell people about the real Jesus if you aren't fun.
Yeah. Right. Church should not be a drag, y'all. It should be a safe space where we're like doing a thing and like celebrating God and each other and like going through the hard times and the good times. If it's feeling like a total drag, that might be something you might want to work on this year. That might be a priority. So figure out, how do we celebrate small wins, big wins, milestones, whimsy, fun. As vestry and bishop committee members, that you're approachable, you're meeting with each other about concerns or ideas. It is not a bad idea to get out your directory and give every vestry member 2 or 3 people in the congregation to just do check-ins with. Like you're not needing anything. You're just like, hey, how's it going? You just leave a message. Also, clergy, this is also a great idea. Just checking in. One time, before I came to Michigan, I had a specialty in working with high conflict churches, and I left a message with someone. I didn't even speak to them. And then they walked down the street. It was a neighborhood church. And she's like, no one has ever called me and checked in. And then she gave me a $5,000 check. I'm just saying. Apparently it's impactful. Think about how you're experiencing your vestry. In vestry meetings, what is the mojo? Are you guys working as a team? Are you cultivating belonging? What are your dynamics in creating safe spaces for important conversations? We have models for that, to think about that, to work on that. So write down, this is a lot. You can't do everything. Write down one thing. One thing. Now, look at those things. And out of all the things you wrote down, put in there what you put in the chat, what you want to work on. Just put in the chat. Yep. Winnable goals and God moments. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Guys, and right now are we hungry for belonging and fun? Yes. Yes, we are. Absolutely. Shine your light. Yep. Yes. Speaking faithfully. Yep. Yes. Yeah. If you're the highest correlation, figuring out how do we really talk about where God is moving in our lives is incredibly transformative. Yep. And over communicate. Yep. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Okay. I've lost my thing. Thank you guys. Yep. Absolutely. So remember, here's some takeaways that I want you all to just hold in your heart. Viability is about alignment. As the bishop often says, you don't talk about finances and then suddenly more finances appear. It's about what is the conversations around alignment. Vitality is about identity, mission, and impact. Remember, they don't correlate. You have to work on both. You have to have your eye on both as a vestry. You might want to say the vestry is just here for viability. That's actually not true as leaders. And depending on size, what you all talk about, where you are in your own development depends on that. I have a core belief that there is always something working at your congregation. There is always a strength to build on. And so identifying that and building off that is very powerful. In our time right now, where there's like a lot of volatility and change, it is best as leaders to just acknowledge difficulties and that we're in this together. It's a super powerful thing. Create winnable goals and celebrate. And remember, call anybody, anyone on diocesan staff. If you're like, do you have a model for that? Do you have resources for this? We want to do this thing. We exist because we want all of our congregations to be both viable, vital, and transformative. And we want to like help you get there. And just because it works at one place doesn't mean it'll work at your place, but we have ways to adapt things to your particular context and to your particular people. And also, I have to plug, you're going to get a lot of these resources for many of the things in viability and vitality at the College for Congregational Development. So if you're interested, the registration will be going live this week. So just know that piece. And I have just a couple of minutes. Are there any questions? Thoughts, feelings, pushback? Okay.
Where is,
Yeah. Go ahead.
where is the that congregational development, where it's a 5-day workshop, where will that be?
So it's hosted at the cathedral and then overnight accommodations at Wayne State University. It's
Okay.
also set up if you're in driving distance as a commuter program, but it is like an all-day thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. My goal with this is I want us to feel effective, especially in times of chaos. In order to create hope, we have to have things we can do. And so I want you to really think about what can we do? We can't take on the whole world. So we really need, oh, Dennis is telling me CCD is live already. But so what I wanted to do was create these lists for you guys to pick like what we can do and focus on just doing the next right thing. So can you explain how vestry shift to making conversation about more central to the work, and how might this work if a congregation identifies? Yeah, so Bishop, back to did you talk about the agenda, an agenda format?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I would do, Anthony, is the first up, right, is vitality, right? And so we're looking at prayer. That was a major piece of the vitality. One of the issues in and markers of vitality is prayer. The another piece was being very clear about what is it that you're working on in the world, the big audacious piece. Again, vitality, right? So I think as you put those at the top of the meeting, and then as you're aligning, then you're looking at viability. I mean, I think when you're thinking about doing the pieces of the agenda, really look at those areas and think about, so I've picked one area in vitality, one area in viability, and make sure each agenda addresses that, right? Keep diving in. And you could have groups that are saying, okay, here are the top two things in vitality, here are the top two things in viability, and this is where we're going, right? But it's got to be both. Because if you just do viable, you aren't gonna be, right?
Yeah.
If you just do vital, you're not gonna be. You have to do both, but I think um I would have the vital pieces at the beginning.
Also, another tip and trick is putting on your agenda, like what if you're going to work through stuff, if you're like, here are our goals, like a big conversation chunk at the front of your meeting,
That's
right?
it.
Right. So you're going to identify what is the most important conversation we need to have today. So you may have, so let's say you guys come back. Let's say maybe you look at this presentation as a vestry, you all agree on your like winnable goals, right? And then you schedule that out in your agendas. And then we're going to talk about and figure out next steps. So it's thinking about how you're going to organize those. You can't have all the conversations in one meeting because you're going to want to go home at some point, right? But thinking about what is the conversation we need to have, and then make sure you're always tracking your next steps, right? We all know life happens, but just trying to put in a little gracious accountability so you don't miss or lose that train of thought also helps.
And break it up into, I think you said this, Ellen, but you track it, but break it up into winnable chunks.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, we did that, so that we get to say yes.
Absolutely. All right, you guys stay in touch. Call, text, email, send a carrier pigeon if you have that capability. I can't promise that my window will be open, but I will notice if a bird runs into it. And just know that we're here for you. And we're gonna keep going because we're on a schedule. Carmen is up next with something that I know is on most people's minds. Welcoming children and families, correct, Carmen? All right.
All right. Hi, everybody. So, as you know, I do work with our children and youth and totally understand if you need to like stand up or move or do whatever you need to do while you're also listening to this. But we are going to kind of work through practical ways that we can welcome our children and families in our congregations. And in doing this, I just want to be very clear that like actually this presentation is mostly congregations in our diocese. So it's things that are happening, either some of your churches are actively doing or are things that your neighbors are doing. So articles, websites, these things are great. And also like talk to each other because you guys are doing great things. And these are all congregations with varying levels of active youth, children, and family participation. So kind of as we get started, through this work, I both participate in trainings, curriculum, and practice deep dive and curriculum deep dives. And I get to visit a lot of congregations that do this work. I also am actively living it right now. This is my son, William. He's 1 year old, and he loves to come visit all of your churches. And in doing this, I don't think you need to be a parent to care about this. And also, I now get to experience the things I've been asking and telling congregations to do. And so I get to see how this impacts like not only the child's experience, but also the parent's experience. And when churches, do things to actively make a family feel welcomed, it really does make all the difference. So what we're going to do is take just a minute, and I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to think of your worship space. Now I want you to think of it from the vantage point of about 3 feet and lower. As you enter this space, what do you see? How easy is your space to navigate? What items are easy to reach? And what items are available to support your experience in worship? If you want to kind of drop in the chat some of the things that maybe you thought of or noticed in your space that would have made it accessible from this vantage point. Yes, William loves a good stained glass window. Loves to watch how it hits. The light hits the walls. You see lots of feet, yes. Knees. Picture books, fidget toys, soft space with pillows, and an I Spy quilt. A massive church, pews. Yes, often when I enter a space now, I'm like, how many times is William going to hit his head on this pew and the golf pencils? Thank you. If you have golf pencils in your church, it is likely that my child or another child has tried to eat them. So there's lots of things that you could see, right? Maybe you can't see the priest or you can't see what's happening up front. You see children's area. So these are all really great things. To be very clear, I'm not asking you to get rid of all of your pews or your tiny pencils. As we work through this material, I want you to keep your specific context and space in mind. What are your current offerings for young people and families, and how can you continue to support their engagement? So as we go, I actually want to play a quick video from Becky Beauregard, who is the Family Formation Director at All Saints East Lansing, and they've done some really amazing work to engage their.
So at All Saints, we really try to make sure that wherever adults might be, there's also room for children and families with small children. So during coffee hour, we have a smaller table with small chairs that the kids can sit at, and their parents can feel comfortable having them sit at a smaller chair without worrying that they're going to fall off of a larger folding chair. And they're able to connect with each other and talk with each other while the kids are also interacting. And it's also really great when we have new people that come, they head right over to that table where they see the kids sitting. Their kids can sit down with the other kids, and then they have a chance to chat with the other parents with similar aged kids. In the sanctuary, we have a soft space with books and soft toys and a carpet down in the front. In the back, we have a coloring table for kids that are elementary age and younger. And I admit sometimes it gets a little rambunctious, but it's also pretty amazing when you walk by and hear them saying the Lord's Prayer with the rest of the congregation or singing a familiar communion hymn. It might look like they're just coloring, but they're really absorbing what's going on around them and able to feel comfortable participating in that way. We also have gliders available for families of small children and also people who find it medically necessary to be able to rock during the service, and it helps them feel more comfortable. We have a nursery that has the live stream going of the service so that the kids can see what's going on in the service, and then the parents can also, if they have to stop in, can see what's going on. But I think one of the biggest things is just when a new person comes, or newish, or when the person finally brings their new baby to the service, really just at the very beginning saying, we're so glad you're here. And also, we understand your kids might make noise. It's absolutely fine. So just right off the bat, saying that we are just happy that they're there.
So what I appreciate so much about this video, and the primary focus of kind of our time, is going to be thinking about these in-worship opportunities. So the idea that where there is space for adults, there is also space for children, and that understanding and welcoming children and young people into this space also means that we're welcoming them wholly and fully as they are, right? So noises and all. And when we think about entering your worship space, so what anyone, but in this case particularly our children and family, are going to see when they come into space. So at St. John's in Royal Oak, when you enter in, you see a kids corner. You see materials, books that have been curated. You see directions for how to interact with the materials. So this helps to support their participation, their communication for young people. You also can add in, so you might have posted, you might also have it in your bulletin. So I know at a lot of churches, it'll say kind of families are welcomed, or here's what we offer for our young people. And then most importantly, when you do have these spaces, they require upkeep, right? So they require someone or a team of someones who are willing to kind of restock them, clean them, and make sure that they stay tidy and accessible. And a lot of times when we are making these accommodations with our youngest members in mind, they actually support everyone. So when we think about things like hands-on activities, so fidgets, finger labyrinths, writing utensils, these can be used by anyone. At St. John's in Plymouth, they have this like beautiful outside area where they have bookshelves and they have different activities that you can take with you. And then, as Becky mentioned in her video, at All Saints East Lansing, they've done some really intentional seating arrangements. And yes, these benefit children, like parents with small children or grownups with small children, but they also support people who might need rockers for other medical needs. So these changes generally don't just impact your families. I've also seen some churches, I know at St. Stephen's Wyandotte, they have like a seating area in the back that's not just pews. So I've seen people incorporate alternative seating options that actually help everyone to engage in worship. And then the next video we're going to hear from is Casey Zacher, and she is the family director at St. Stephen's Wyandotte. And we're going to kind of listen to some of the really beautiful ways that they are engaging with their children and families and those in their actual immediate community.
Hello, my name is Casey with St. Stephen's Wyandotte, and I'm just going to take a few moments to talk about some of the practices and the spaces that we've implemented to make families feel more welcome. We'll start with the greeting, right? So the first-time visitor. The first-time visitor, that can be an intimidating experience, and we've created welcome bags that are inclusive of literature about what Episcopalians believe, literature about St. Stephen's, our church directly, things like our community outreach and our youth programs. We've also included keepsakes, mini Jesus that comes with a Lord's Prayer card. We have We offer youth activities led by the Safe Church certified volunteers, but the kids are also welcome to stay with their families if they choose to. We leave that up to them. It is important to meet people where they are.
Oh, no. Hold on just a second. Sorry about that. Apologies for that, everyone. Give me 2 seconds. If you would like to enter in the chat while I fix that really quickly, if you would like to enter an accommodation that you could make in your worship space to help your children and families, if you want to kind of plop that in the chat, or something you've done recently that's worked really well. And we'll have the video back up and running in just a second.
It was bound to happen, Carmen. It's okay.
I know we're making it work. Yeah, rocking chairs. I think we're back.
Blessings, but we also do individual projects. So we have a graduation Sunday where we celebrate and recognize people within our church family and our church community on their educational milestones. So it's personalized and it creates a lot of community between us. With regards to children that choose to stay in the main church with their families during worship versus attending the youth programs or the Sunday school, we've created quiet play areas. These areas allow parents to stay engaged with worship and the service while giving an outlet to the youth. We offer a playmat area. It has a few quiet play toys for hand-on engagement, has a reading area with books, and we have faith-based coloring sheets and coloring items such as crayons, supplies, markers, pencils, things age appropriate to the person that wants to color as their outlet. This area is in the back of the church facing the full church, so they're still a part of the service. They're still engaged and they're still with the family community. This area was so successful that we've also created a play space up in the hall. So during fellowship hour or coffee hour, which we all love so much, if families are engaging and there's a youth that needs a little outlet, something to do, something to take that energy, we have a play mat there. Currently, we have a cardboard house, which they can play in or color on. We have blocks. We also set up activities during our fellowship hour, such as intergenerational gameplay. So board games, Jenga, chess is very big for us. And we'll set up activities. So if there's a holiday or a theme that we can follow, something going on in the community, maybe specific to something we're exploring within our scriptures that week. So it could be ornament making, it could be gingerbread house making, it could be rainbow making, it could be decorating cookies and cupcakes, but it's something that we can engage in together as a family, individually as children. Our seniors are able to participate. So it's intergenerational, it's all inclusive, and it's engaging. And I think that's very important here. We also are very key on meeting children where they are and allowing them to engage in worship at their level. So you may have youth or family and adults that are not ready to be a part of the service or do a reading or be in the procession, but perhaps they are, for example, the children at the end of the service that are a little more hesitant to get involved do like to help close the service and give a hallelujah. We have the option of encouraging children to go with an adult partner or as children as a group and carry up offerings. And so it's about meeting people where they are and helping them get comfortable and offering them opportunities to be engaged in worship as well. It is very important that we make them feel affirmed and value. It's about affirming diversity. No two families look the same. No two children's needs are the same. No two adults' needs are the same. So I keep saying meet people where they are. And that's very important to making someone feel welcome, giving them the resources, the outlets, the access, the engagement on their own level. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is included. Everyone is seen. Our families and our individuals, they reflect the diversity of God's creation, and we express that throughout everything we do. So I hope some of this was helpful to anybody that was interested in.
So what I like really appreciated about Casey's kind of discussion and some of the really intentional things that they've done, is that with each decision they make, right, they have their children in mind, but they also have making sure that it's personalized and appropriate to their context. And for a lot of our congregations, if you have preschools in your churches, if you have kind of these like vicariously connected groups, so people that might use your space or be close, but they don't regularly attend worship, they do these really like low risk entry events. Why not? I know several of our other churches do some of these too, where they can come and like explore the space and do activities without feeling super pressured about a worship service. And a lot of our churches have started transitioning to like evening vacation Bible schools because they know that that works for their context better. So I think a lot of it is like listening to your families and those that are close and really like adjusting and providing options, especially for like first time visitors or people with smaller children. They might feel comfortable leaving their child in like a Sunday school or a nursery, and they might not. And so it's providing those choices and those options so that people feel like they are seen and that they can do what's best for their family and their context. So thinking about these spaces, and I saw some of this in the comments. So some churches are able to do spaces, and I want to be very clear, like this is different for each church, each layout. I've seen them done in some like really, really clever and creative ways. So I'm going to show you a few different pictures. And in each of these churches, I would say like the regular attendance of children is very different. And so sometimes having these spaces, if you're a visiting family, seeing a welcoming space is huge. And having these things ready for your visitors, your families, your children, is just so, so vital. And so at Holy Faith Saline, they actually took out a wall because they were using this space for worship, and it's the back of their sanctuary, and you can't see it, but they have both exits are baby gated so that like if parents want to have their children there, they can have it and it's baby gated, so that there's not like the parents don't feel like they need to be like hovering over their children. And they have a lot of toys, hands-on activities, and ways for them to engage in worship. As we saw previously at All Saints, they actually have a space in the front and in the back. So dependent on kind of child's preference, parents' preference, they have like different spaces with slightly different offerings that they can engage in. At St. John's Royal Oak, they have used this space to have like a soft play area for their younger members. And at Wyandotte, they have a space where children can kind of have some hands-on activities and toys as well. And then these are not in our diocese, but one thing I did want to point out is like these spaces sometimes feel like you need to like remove a bunch of pews or do like major reno on your worship space. That is not what I'm telling you to do. If you're in a place to do that and it works for your context, that is beautiful and great. If it doesn't, that is also understandable. There are ways, such as having those designated spaces that I showed you. I've seen a lot of congregations where it's like, it's a take a bag or take an item to your seat. That is still great. If you have like an area set up like this, where you have lap desks and soft mats so that they have an option if they want to engage with worship that way. But, you know, I understand that like every space doesn't mean that you are able. Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. And I think it's working in your space and with your, with kind of where you're at right now. So one thing to look at, and I saw Troy said that they were doing this. So to support like children in worship, it helps to give them tools. We want we get frustrated when families and kids don't stay at a church for a long period of time, and then we realize that we actually haven't been doing very much to teach them how to like actively participate in worship and in the life of the church. So one thing you can do, sometimes you call them busy bags. This is kind of reframing that into worship bags and equipping them with tools that they can use during worship so that they can better engage. And obviously this will depend on like the age of the child, right? So one thing I love in this is, and you can find this article on Build Faith, it's at the end too, but one thing that I love about this is like they include stickers. So it has labeled stickers that you could like put, oh, we're about to sing a hymn, or oh, we're switching to communion. And that way they can start to understand what worship looks like. As previously mentioned, it could have items like finger labyrinths, picture books that are kind of curated to your context, but there's some like really great places to find recommendations for religious books. There's websites such as Illustrated Ministries and Spark House that do really great liturgically aligned children's bulletins, or coloring pages, crayons. If you have crafters doing like lacing activities or laminated figures or props for retelling Bible stories, those kinds of things are great to have in your worship bags so that kids can like also engage with some of the material at their level. Another way that we've seen this do this, so I've gotten to attend and it was really fun, but at St. Andrew's in Ann Arbor, they actually have like a family-centered service. So families come to any services, but this service is like designed so that children can move, children can make noise. They receive like a picture, kind of what their responsibility is, or like if they want a job, so if they want to help like the candles or do that kind of thing, they receive like roles, and often the sermon is like a godly play story or some kind of hands-on story. And then they also still have their Sunday school after, and then their next worship service follows. So other ways that we can integrate young people into the life of our church, when you do your stewardship campaigns, we talked a lot about that today, include your young people. There are examples of stewardship cards that are for writers and non-writers. So like student or kids could draw or write, and they could say what they love to do, plug them into a ministry team. We love to have acolytes, and I understand that. And sometimes that's not what a child or a young person really wants to do. Maybe they're really passionate about like hospitality and helping with coffee hour or helping with the ushering team. Or I've seen some really amazing young lay readers in our diocese. So ask them, involve them in the parts of the church that are important. Annual meetings. I know at St. Clair's, they did an animal meeting this year where they had the kids bring their stuffed animals, and they actually talked through kind of how a vestry works and how these different parts of the church worked, and let the kids vote in a way like in their animal meeting. So things like that also helps your parents, because then they can participate in the life of the church and their child is receiving care, right? This is the work of a whole. If you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it a million times. I am a collection of a lot of people that cared a lot about my family and me and made sure that we loved being at church. I am the product of a rector that like held me during sermons sometimes. I'm the product of Miss Lula, who would like hand me butterscotch during church and let me sit with her. Specific programming for children is helpful sometimes, and sometimes it's being the person. Like as a parent, when there is like someone very kind that's like, oh, can I hold them? Can I rock them? Like that means so much, just to have people that care and want to support you and do life with you, honestly. And in thinking about that, your words matter. Be really intentional in your welcome. Don't comment on the volume or outbursts. No one is more aware about how much noise their child is making that day than the parent. So saying things like, oh, they did such a good job today, or they were really quiet, or oh, we weren't really feeling it today. Like the parent's very aware of that. And so just being careful, it's like you might not realize that comment, but like if they get it enough times, it's going to cause some anxiety or stress around, sermons and they're and also providing spaces like and
Yeah.
language that helps parents to understand that. Um, Norm your language as a congregation. Maybe go through some ways that you could language you could use to support your families. And then find ways like the table or maybe having some helpers who can support during worship and coffee hours so that families can fully participate. Communicate your offerings. Tell people what you're doing. Keep your websites up to date. Promote regular and special opportunities. Utilize your social medias with permission from your parents. If you have questions about how that works with Safe Church, reach out to a Carmen. But tell people what you're doing. A lot of people will check a website to see what is offered. And let people know how their children will be able to engage. How will the young people be able to engage? You've got this. I just want to thank you for your time and for the support of our youngest members. I'm always happy to kind of talk through ways specific to your context or if there's resources that we can do to support you in this work. I know sometimes it feels like there are no children. I've visited a lot of our congregations and there are children and sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but you've got to love who you have, right? And so in doing some of these small things, they end up being huge acts of kindness for your families. And we'll have this in the slides, but these are just some of the websites. Build Faith is really great for getting some of these tools and just a few books and other websites that can be really helpful. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take we've got 5 minutes, so I'm happy to kind of answer any questions or let you go 5 minutes early.
Okay. Guys, thank you. Thank you very much for spending a chunk of time with each other and listening and learning. I'm super, super thankful for my staff, the folks who presented today and our other folks. They do an incredible job. And thank you. And please know how grateful I am for all of you leaders in our communities of faith. 5 years ago today, I got to be your bishop, and it's kind of stunning to me that we're 5 years into this at this point, and I get 10 left till I have to retire. So we're getting stuff done. We're making a difference. It's a fraught world, and it's a time when it is helpful for people to know there are other folks who care and want to connect. So that's part of our call, dear friends. Tomorrow afternoon, before the Super Bowl, we have our Feast of Absalom Jones, the first African American priest in the Episcopal Church, and we'll be celebrating that at Christ Church, Detroit. Bishop Kim Lucas, I'm going to go pick her up from the airport in a couple of hours. She's flying in from Colorado to come and preach with us. She is a very, very, very good preacher. She's a graduate of a fine seminary, the Union Theological Seminary in New York. I'm just delighted that Kim has taken time to be with us. So I hope you all can join for that service. The slides has been mentioned several times. I love that you're asking for them. We will get them out next week. There'll be places also to find them on the website. The recording will be available next week. And what I mostly want you to know is that as you are being and becoming even more vital and viable congregations, embodying the gospel of Jesus, I and my staff, we are here to assist, as are your neighbors, right? We are in this, doing it, making a difference, and know how much to know how much you are in my prayers and thoughts pretty much all the time. So, yeah. Um, anything else? Look at that. All right, ministry fair. Go. What else? Church Meets World 2025. We're having that at St. John's Plymouth, aren't we?
St.
Yes.
John's Plymouth, the first Saturday in May.
There we go. Any other announcements?
Be on the lookout for Night Watch and summer service trip materials. Night Watch is a great way to engage your youth, so definitely sign up for that.
All right.
Thing for vestry members is it's not a bad idea if you're not already receiving the diocesan news to get on that list. So you know what's going on, the resources that are being offered. Dennis, I'm sorry to ask you this. Can you put the link in for people to sign up for that? Just as leaders, it's just helpful to know kind of what's going on in the wider church.
Also invited, and let us know. You are invited to our leadership call that I hold with lay and clergy once a month. And so you are invited if you're interested in getting that Zoom link. Let Dennis know. It's usually an hour-long call at 4 o'clock on, is it like the second Wednesday of the month, I think, ish.
Dennis is nodding yes.
Yep. So there you go. And the weekly connection. All right. Friends, may the blessing of God be with you, hold you, enliven you, and fill you with courage and hope. Creator, Christ, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.